Okay, today we are digging into the challenge that multi-advisory teams face, but typically never fully solve. How do we get all of the advisors on the team moving in the same direction, each with their own flow and style and experience and clients? How do we get everybody to move in lockstep together on the things that actually matter so that the client experience is uniform firm wide? This is a huge challenge. So, we're going to walk through what a baseline experience really is and should be, how to standardize it without making everybody feel like top brass is pushing something down their throats or that we're smothering personalization. We want every advisor to feel seen and known and heard in the process. And we'll talk about how to make it stick and also how to bring along those skeptics. So, those individuals that have been doing it the same way for a long time that don't want to make any changes, how do we help them integrate new behaviors where it doesn't feel like we're just shifting gears overnight? Okay, where do we start? I can remember a long time ago reading a book by Rachel Hollis. And in the book, she talks about how she took her entire C suite team to a Tony Robbins conference. And at the conference, they got all jacked up, heard all these ideas, worked on all this stuff, created this big vision for their company. And they came back to the employees all jacked up, right? Having had this really amazing multi-day experience. And they came back and they're like, we're going to do a firm wide juice cleanse. And everybody in the office was like, I'm sorry, what now? And they're like, yeah, we're going to do a firm wide juice cleanse. And like, here's why it's going to be great. And one of the employees who had been there a long time kind of came up to Rachel and was like, I got to be honest, we don't understand how a juice cleanse and explosive diarrhea is going to equal better results for the firm. We were not part of the journey. And I remember reading this story and realizing that in order to get, and I see this all the time with group coaching, right? So we'll have an advisor come into the program and then go back to their team and be like, guess what? We're going to do this process and this process. And here's the playbook for that. And while at the end of the day, yes, you are the boss and you do get to set the stage, but for what you want your business to look and feel like and how it's going to operate, you get so much better adoption when people are along for the ride, when there is a shared vision. So even if you're the one going to the Tony Robbins conference or you're the one participating in our group coaching program, which by the way, I always recommend bringing your team members into the group coaching program. You get 3 people for one fee, so you might as well. But what happens is when there's co-creation of a process, when people see the vision that you are aiming for. So even if you're attending alone, you still need to come back and before you just top down, like, hey, here's how we're going to do things now. We need to be casting the vision for what it is the process is going to do for the team. Otherwise, it can feel a lot like, hey, I went to this conference and now I'm back and here's a bunch of work for you to do, right? And that's not how we want it to feel. We want it to feel collaborative and we want our team to co-create. So the first thing that we need to do is get all of the advisors into a space. So whether it's 2 advisors, 3 advisors, 9 advisors, we need to get everybody onto the same page about what the vision of the business looks like. How do we want our clients to feel? What is our vision? What is our mission statement? You can do all of that stuff. But the first thing we need to do when it comes to client experience is we need to establish a client experience baseline that every single advisor must deliver. So this could be onboarding steps. This could be review cadence. This could be surge versus a rolling schedule, or like what I did, cluster scheduling. Um, Tax time touch points. We want to standardize the minimum of what it is that we want our clients to experience, and then allow advisors to do some personalization within those limits. But once we establish the non negotiables that every advisor must do, right, and get everybody onto the same page and in agreement with this, then we can publish internally, externally, I don't care, you do you, a client service calendar. So mapping out the year and what you're going to be doing for your clients. When are you going to be holding meetings for your A clients? When will we be holding meetings for your B clients? And if you're in the group coaching program, don't worry, take a deep breath. We do all of this inside of the 10 months. But we are going to lay out your value adds. We're going to talk about workshops or seminars or different initiatives that you might have in your business. And we're going to map out the whole year, also taking into consideration the prep and the follow-up execution that comes out of those meetings. So number one, make sure you're not overwhelming yourself or your team. But number two, to make sure every advisor knows what they're supposed to be doing and when. So let's say you do a big tax time value add in, let's say, February. Your team and your advisors might need to be doing something in January or December to prepare, like maybe it's running Holista plans and writing recommendations. You need to be doing something ahead of time. So we need to map that out, but we need to establish that all advisors are going to be doing this value add in February. So identifying non-negotiables, bringing everything into a service calendar so everybody knows we're standardizing who's doing what and when. So teams stay synchronized. We stay working ahead. Nobody's surprised, like, I didn't know we were doing that. That way, some clients don't get a different experience from one advisor that they do from other advisors, right? And another key thing that we see helping multi-advisor teams row in the same direction is bringing tangibles into it. So creating physical or visual artifacts or collateral, whatever, fancy corporate lingo you want to call them. But this could be your one-page meeting plan. This could be how you want Jump or Quinn or whatever AI software you're using to make your post-meeting follow-up email template look like. Maybe you have a financial planning summary packet that you provide, a welcome kit, tangible deliveries that you are delivering in your meetings firm-wide. So then we need to create some operational scaffolding to support these different initiatives with consistency. Okay, so one of the things that I suggest, again, it is really, really hard to get a bunch of advisors who are rowing in slightly different directions into the same boat. So centralizing prep, but then decentralizing delivery of that. So an advisor can often feel like, hey, I was doing it and things were going just fine. My clients were happy. I was doing a great job. I was meeting whatever production requirements you had of me. And now you want me to change everything and follow a script and feel like a robot. So while if we get everybody, let's say you establish theme-based planning or other stuff we talk about at the Efficient Advisor, let's say you are going to be holding all of your A client meetings in January, February, March. Your team, by having the same agenda for those meetings, the prep can come from a SOP. So the prep for all of those meetings can be exactly the same. Then the delivery style of that prep, so the delivery of that agenda, can be different advisor to advisor. So some advisors are more chit-chatty and want to gather personal client intel and how are the grandkids, and other advisors might want to get more down to business, or they might be more analytical versus more big picture, depending on the ideal client avatars that they have. So by saying we're going to deliver this thing and then giving advisors some flexibility on how they're going to deliver it, right? We're going to do it more conceptual with pretty pictures from Money Guide Pro versus analytical with the background data sheets from Money Guide Pro, giving some of that flexibility to the advisors, but giving them that baseline we talked about, right? Well, you will deliver this X thing. And I'm not saying it has to be from financial planning software. I'm not saying that at all. I personally used financial planning software and I loved it, but I know that's not every advisor's cup of tea. But centralizing the prep and then decentralizing the delivery allows, standardized data gathering, plan updates, standardizing pre-meeting briefs. Like if everybody on the team has the same process of we're going to reach out to clients 2 weeks prior to the meeting and ask them what questions they want to add to the agenda, right? That would be the same, but then it would change the agenda and allow the advisor some freedom and flexibility to actually deliver the agenda. Okay. The other thing we can centralize is some of the fields in your CRM. So we can make a baseline for all advisors that you need to be completing these specific fields inside of the CRM after the meeting. So, by establishing those baselines again that are going to be advisor or firm wide, by getting all of the advisors into the room and establishing that baseline together and building agreements upon that. And then, if you want to add additional information into your CRM, let's say you're using Quinn and other people on your team are not using Quinn. And by the way, if you don't know what Quinn is an AI agent. I just started using it in my business maybe a few weeks ago, and it is already a complete game changer. It's really, really impressive what Quinn is capable of doing. Quinn is an AI agent, so it will do meeting prep for you. It's like the note takers, but on not even steroids, like on cocaine. It does a lot of your administrative tasks and it can think through like next steps. And by think through, I mean you're feeding it what to think through, but it can read your email, go in and check your CRM. It can find details about whatever question your client emailed you about and prep a draft to your client. It can also take meeting notes. But let's say you're using Quinn and your Quinn is going to listen into your meetings and do all of these updates. You can tell Quinn, we must update these specific fields inside of Redtail, let's say. And then Quinn can also add additional information for you, or you could go in as the advisor where other advisors on your team might not have that level of detail. But as long as you're all using the same minimum required tools that are minimum required fields, I don't know how you want to describe it, like bare minimum things like these have to get input every single time we do a meeting. Um, and by doing required fields, you can build workflows where an advisor cannot advance a task without completing the essentials. So maybe you need to add meeting notes. Maybe you need to add next action dates. Maybe you need to add trades. So they can't advance the workflow until that field is completed. So by putting some of those kind of like catch-alls in place to force compliance, that's really helpful too. I also think codifying your sales process, or what we call inside of our group coaching program, we're like in the throes of it right now with our group that just started in August, where we are productizing your process. So your prospect to client process, productizing it, meaning creating a 3-step process, a 5-step process, a 4-step process, whatever your team has, and standardizing it that, hey, this is how we're going to do it. We're going to do a 15-minute discovery call. Once we determine they're not a fit, we'll do our Dear John process. Once we determine they are a fit, we will move on to the data gathering and connections process. They'll upload their documents before the meeting, after the meeting, whatever it is you decide. Then they'll move on to the analysis piece where that happens behind the scenes. And here are the 3 softwares or 3 things that we will be doing analysis on. And then we'll present recommendations, right? Like, so codifying your process. So inquiry, screen, discovery, 1-page plan, recommendations, whatever yours looks like. But getting everybody onto the same flow creates a common doorway into working with your business. Whether you're working with me or you're working with a different advisor inside of our practice, you're following the same path to becoming a client. We also want to create playbooks and checklists. So, high performing teams literally write and share playbooks for all of their processes. What to do when we get a death claim, onboarding, referral process. And the act of writing them is literally half of the magic. That's really the hard part. Then implementing them is the other half of the magic. So, again, that's something we do inside of our group coaching program. So, if you're in it right now, we got you. We're going to build all of these processes and playbooks. And then at the end, we're going to implement them inside of the business. But by having actually standardizing your processes and playbooks, will help advisors with more adherence. Okay. We want to give advisors style freedom. So that's one of the things that I hear all of the time from advisors is I want autonomy and I don't want it to be like we have to follow a certain script in every single meeting. And good, great. Your clients don't want you following like a robotic script either. So you can create a good, better, best adoption tier. making the good the mandatory floor, that baseline, and then having better and best recommendations. So advisors can keep the style freedom from above the floor, but we can guarantee that minimum is being created. Okay, so the other thing we can do is design it for partial autonomy. So lock down the backbone, right? That's really what we're doing when we say productizing your process or codifying your sales process. Lock down the backbone. So craft the agenda, craft the meeting prep, craft the follow up, craft the steps, but allowing advisors autonomy and telling them that they have the autonomy for storytelling. So, whether they want to use their why story or they want to use the firm's why story, where they want to do their own personal shared experiences, the way they ask questions inside of those first meetings, giving them permission to use the questions that they have to receive the best results from their ICA with. So giving them some of that flexibility and stylistic freedom, but having that backbone structure of we prep this way, we execute this way. This is the follow up email that they receive within 24 hours. I'm giving the advisor freedom to modify the way that that follow up letter comes out, as long as it's hitting the key points. That's all I care about. Here's what we did. Here's what we discussed. Here's what happens next. Here's what we need you to do. Here's what we're going to do. Like those are kind of the basics that need to be in there, but giving the advisors some stylistic freedom to express themselves inside of the process. Okay. So we want to create graceful on ramps. So, especially in advisory practices where we've got advisors of different ages, some are nearing retirement. And I hear this from, oh, we have so many advisors in our group coaching program who their parents are in the business and they're working together and they're like, how do I teach an old dog new tricks? Or my mom is transitioning the business to me, but she does not want to learn anything new. She does not want to change the way that she's doing things. If we can create graceful on ramps for them where we give them a minimum floor and create like a transition kit for them almost. So helping, giving them the template client letters, um, giving them support in how to do those minimum fields inside of Salesforce or Redtail. They don't have to fully jump into AI or jump. I mean, once they try it, they'll probably never go back, but you don't have to fully force them into all of it. So that's where that good, better, best adoption comes into play. And my personal recommendation is again, bringing them into this process and framing it as you've been doing this a long time. You obviously have a lot of wisdom and knowledge we want to capture. And I want to be able to repeat what you've built and add my own function and flair to it. And I would say most advisors we experience that are father daughter, mother son, parent child, or just successor and previous owner or longtime owner, G1, G2, whatever you want to call it, creating like a G1, G2 playbook where you're kind of developing, here's where we're at and here's where I ultimately want it to go. And I need your help to get me there. Because most of these G1s do know that they don't do things the newfangled way. They don't see anything wrong necessarily with the way that they do it, or maybe they see opportunity, but they just don't care to learn it. So that's where creating some of those baselines might be really helpful. And then creating a playbook to over time using those baselines and adding to it for G2 advisors. So this is what mom or dad does. Here's how I do it. And I'm going to use Quinn, or I'm going to use Jump, or I'm going to use Hazel, or some of these new AI tools that are out there to help me do it better, faster, smarter, cheaper, and easier. But we can't necessarily force our G1s to do the same. So, anyways, I hope that was helpful for you. Again, kind of recapping, we need to define the non negotiables, the client experience baselines, establish that client service calendar, make the experience tangible where we're using the same visuals, artifacts, collateral, and creating some key collateral along the way that we're going to be delivering. So everybody is using the same thing. And again, bringing everybody into the room and co creating this process, even if you're the one owning it. We want to centralize prep, decentralize delivery of said prep. We want to create minimum required fields or actions inside of the CRM. We want to codify or productize your sales process. And we want to build playbooks and checklists, including good, better, best adoption tiers and a G1 to G2 rollout of how we're going to create this baseline that mom or dad can do, and then how we're going to amplify it, elevate it, etc. Another great way, before we wrap up here, that I just thought of, another great way that we can bring a multi-advisor group is by, instead of having every advisor having their own CSA, creating centralized processes or different operations. So what's the word I'm looking for? Segmenting your service teams by function. So you might have one person that's doing all of the prep and execution from the meetings, another person that is doing all of your onboarding and applications. And by having one person doing it for all the advisors are going to have to come into adherence in doing it the same way. Otherwise, you're having all these little independent teams within a big channel, and you're not maximizing your CSA's skills and abilities. And um, by breaking them down into functions and having one CSA serving functions for all of the advisors, you're going to get better results. So if you have a CSA that's amazing at planning and recommendations, and they're doing that for all of the advisors, you're going to get better results than having a CSA who is awesome at all of the operational and onboarding stuff, but maybe not so skilled at writing one-page plans for you and running output inside of your financial plan. So anyways, I hope you found that to be helpful. This is a couple of tips and tricks that I've seen over the last 20 years in this industry to get multiple advisors rowing in the same direction without frustration and with actual adherence and adoption.